Hey, everybody. It's been a minute. I wanted to do this interview because I met an amazing guy named Scott Howard. He's a holistic bioarchitect. His company is called Earth and Hands. He began studying natural building in 1999 and has taught workshops every year since 2001. His company, Earth and Hand Natural Building, has done projects in 10 countries and several states in the US, completing several full-size natural homes. He's got an upcoming workshop called Bioarchitecture Primer this month, and it's all about sacred geometry, holistic design, permaculture, homestead design, and natural home design. And he's a super cool guy. So welcome, Scott Howard. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I'm so excited.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. Tell me, how did you get interested in doing all of this? Because it's amazing.
Well, I did start as a kid doing ceramics. And so I was always really into just kind of playing with the clay and making mixtures, clay and sand and trying to create different forms. So I built a lot of, hand-built ceramic sculptures. And then at some point, I heard about this phenomenon they call cob, which is the same thing as adobe.
Mhm.
It's a mixture of sand and clay and straw that you can build a house with, or whatever you want. Really, you can build a lot of things with this stuff. It's a very universal building material, the first building material known to man, really. And so I learned about this material, and I said, "Wow, this is kind of a no-brainer. Everyone needs to know about this. Why haven't I heard about this my whole life up until I was 18?" And so after I became aware of that, I went and took a workshop that same year with the Cobb Cottage Company, studied under Yanto Evans, who's a famous cobber here in the Pacific Northwest, who originally brought the cob method over from Wales. He's a Welshman.
Nice. That's awesome. So when I was looking through all of your information, you were talking about how these materials, this cob material, and maybe explain what cob is for people who haven't heard about it, but you were explaining how it's a better and a higher vibrational material to build with. So where did cob come from? What is it for people who don't know?
So in Wales and England, they use the term cob, and it really just means loaf. Because when you mix the clay and sand and straw together with some water, it makes sort of like a blob, and these blobs, you would then pass them up to the person working on the wall, and they would squish them into place and kind of form them into a monolithic adobe. It's also known as puddled adobe. So, like you can build a house out of adobe bricks that you form of the same material and dry into bricks, and then glue together into a wall using the same material that's wet, like a mortar. Or you can just form the entire structure out of the pasty material all at once, and then it dries all together into a monolithic form. So that's what cob is. Cob and adobe are the same thing. Um, and then you're asking about sort of the vibration, let's say, of the material. And yeah, there are some amazing health benefits to using this material to build your home. And it's essentially creating breathable walls that are mold proof, fireproof, generally insect proof, usually bulletproof. There's a lot of benefits. It's very easy to build with. The material comes from nearby the site. It's non-toxic, um, and it can last for thousands of years, and it's infinitely changeable. So it's very easy to say add onto a wall or remove a piece of a wall, for example. So there's a lot of benefits to building with earth. It's the most common building material in the world. I think over 60% of the people in the world still live in a building that's at least partially made of adobe.
How does it, I mean, if it's made from earth, how does it not just dissolve in the rain?
Great question. And I'm glad you asked, because this is what about 90% of people who hear about it, they say, well, how does that work? And basically, once it's dry, it's like a clay cement. Okay, there's no chemical cement in it, but the clay, when it dries, binds the sand particles together, and the straw kind of holds it all together. And as long as the clay is reasonably dry, it will hold its shape. You get some surface damage from, say, maybe driving rain, or you can get severe damage from things like floods, or a tsunami or something.
Right.
So it's not 100% waterproof, but generally doesn't receive as much damage as you might imagine. And we build earthen buildings either in dry places, or if it's in a wet place, it has a higher foundation made of less permeable materials such as rock, and bigger overhangs for the roof. So you would be looking at 2 to 4 foot overhangs. So it's very hard for the rain to actually hit the cob wall. So
That
those are the general principles, and there are a wide variety of methods to improve the strength of the surface of an earthen wall or earthen plaster, different coatings and additives, and a lot of times we'll plaster exterior walls with the lime stabilized lime sand plaster, which is much more waterproof.
right. And
So,
that's the white coating that we
correct.
see in houses sometimes. Okay.
Yeah, the white coating, which also breathes. So, when you look into it, earth and building really is a blessing and a really healthy way to go. And we try to integrate that into all of our home designs.
It's so interesting because I mean, all of the materials that they're using these days don't last as long and they're toxic. They're not that good for you. And so it seems like the new movement is the old movement of of how to build, and it seems healthier. Like we're rediscovering how we used to live.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, things just move in cycles, the ebb and the flow. And a lot of the modern building science and materials has been invented within the last 50 years. So it is brand new. That's not to say that there aren't some beneficial things that we've learned, and we're integrating the latest science with the ancient building materials and methods and knowledge. And yeah, the old ways never fully go away. We
Mm,
just need to upgrade them.
right. So you studied anthropology. So did that help you in what you're doing right now?
Yeah, it's true. I got really interested in studying so many different cultures and the way that they live with the earth, even back in high school. And then I majored in anthropology in college. And yeah, it was part of the reason why I was interested in earth and building, because again, going back to the old ways, the indigenous knowledge, and permaculture itself is a conglomeration of indigenous wisdom from around the world. And natural building is a subset of permaculture. It's part of the permaculture design principles. It fits into that, you know, category in the modern movement of permaculture. But yeah, anthropology, I think, is really useful in a lot of ways, because when we look at the problems of the world, it's like, yeah, there's the environmental degradation. You could study it for years and not get to the end of it. There's so much to know about what's happening with the global ecosystems around the world, and it's really sad. But the facts aren't enough to explain why it's happening. the reason why everything's happening comes back to the human beings and our choices and the cultural and sociological and political reasons why things are the way they are. So I see everything as a cultural problem, and natural building and permaculture are part of that shift to a more positive culture. So we're bringing in the indigenous wisdom to rebalance our own culture.
I love it. So earth and buildings, are we able to create these in an urban environment? Like what does that look like in urban environment? Or are you just focusing on maybe more rural places at the moment?
Oh yeah, there's been plenty of urban projects, and I mean, just so the audience understands, there's very modern earthen buildings around the world in cities and very large buildings, especially in Europe and the Middle East and Africa, South America, Mexico. You know, it's mostly just the U.S. that can. People are just not used to it. They
Right.
became culturally unaware and culturally used to just seeing everything as cement, concrete and steel and glass, and so if we look at some of the buildings that are used and are some of them are quite old and still in use, like even in Germany, for example, some of these buildings are huge apartment buildings or complexes, and they're not any different than any other modern building. I mean, they're functioning the same way, and their walls are straight up and down, and they have a very kind of European sort of styling, let's say, that kind of matches what we have going on in the US. So there's no reason why we can't integrate that to the patterns of life that we already have here in the US. Um, it's just it's just a matter of familiarity and really getting things straightened out with the building codes.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, are there any bigger buildings in the US or not really because of the codes, the coding?
Well, yeah, and in fact, if you go farther back in time, I mean, the oldest inhabited settlement on historical record, I think, is like the Taos Pueblo in New
Oh,
Mexico, and it's a giant apartment building made of adobe, puddled adobe,
wow.
in the old style. So, because they have their land that's been continuously their land the whole time, they have their original buildings and their original way of building them. That they're not required to follow the building codes that are in the rest of the state, or
Mm,
in the nation. So there's an example of very old buildings, and then there's a lot of colonial buildings that are made of earth as well, especially on the East Coast.
mhm.
Most people don't realize. I mean, I think there's a couple major buildings in Washington D.C., like across the street or within blocks of the White House, that are made with earth. Even parts of the White House, I think, maybe made of earth. So it's kind of like this like little known secret. Um, and so you got a lot of old Spanish buildings also, in the Spanish colonial era, that are made of adobe bricks. See
Mhm.
that along the Southwest. So yeah, some pretty substantial structures that are still in use.
That's great. And so what's the cost? Is there a cost benefit or is it the same? What would it cost to build a house this way instead of like a traditional way? Or not? This would be the traditional way, come on, but um
Well,
the more modern way,
what you
as
mean?
opposed
Yeah,
to
I mean, it's kind of it's a complicated answer, because basically when you use more natural materials, invariably there's a bit more labor or materials processing that is involved. So you can use machines to process the materials,
Mhm.
or you can sometimes just do it by hand. But to keep the costs low, if somebody wants to keep costs low, they generally have to do it themselves. So it's a lot of work. You could say it's a labor of love, or you could say it's a love of labor. Uh, and it's both. I enjoy, if you're enjoying the process while you build your house, like, is it really quantifiable in dollars?
Right.
And so, but generally, I tell people if they want to get a custom design and they want to build and design their own house, and it's not going to be less expensive than your very low quality stick frame homes that are going up so quickly today, made out of really crappy materials that will probably make you sick in the wrong conditions.
Yeah.
It's hard to compete with something that's so chintzy, and you slap it together and it's not designed to last.
Right.
You want something that's going to last, like whatever the design is. If it's designed to last hundreds or thousands of years, it's probably going to cost a little more.
Yeah.
But generally, you start the conversation at $200 or $250 a square foot. Uh, but and it just depends on materials costs, which state you're in, like who's building it, um, where the materials come from. Some locations you have the earth that you need to make compressed earth blocks or adobes or cob could
Mhm.
come from the building site itself, and so
Right.
that could save quite a bit as opposed to bringing it in, paying someone to drop it off. But yeah, I mean, the same expenses apply to any home, no matter what the walls are made of.
Mhm.
You still got all the same things. You got to have a sink, and got to have
Mhm.
windows, and a roof, and you got to have doors and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, it sounds like this process will last so much longer. I think there's Roman roads that are still fine to drive on today. And like it seems like our roads in the US, they're fixing every other month. So it like depends, right? Maybe it's more of an output in the initially, but you're paying less in maintenance later. Is that true?
Exactly, and it's true of anything. I mean, you could apply the same philosophy to your clothing or
Mhm.
your shoes. you
Right.
know,
That's so true. So you've got a workshop coming up. Tell me a little bit about that. What are you going to be teaching in this workshop?
yeah, it's called the Bioarchitecture Primer, and this is a 9-day course over weekends spread out over a couple months. And we are going to cover the full gambit of an introduction to designing your own ecological, holistic home, and talk about what is bioarchitecture, and go into sacred geometry and harmonizing the home with the land that it's on and the geo forces of the earth. um, Really taking it to building science, and the next level of electrical engineering and science. Um, this was something that I envisioned over a year ago. So the workshop is over a year in the making, and fortunately, we're filling up now. So we already have 8 or 9 participants, and we only have a couple more spaces. So
Yay. Um, so you've created a lot of buildings around the world. Um, have you have you gone back and see like how they're doing like in the like the workshop that you're creating right now is to help people to understand how it works and how it fits in with the land. The buildings that you worked on around the world, how do they feel when you walk into them or when you interact with them, you go around them with the earth? Like how did that feel for you?
yeah, that's a great question, because I think that's a reason why I was also really attracted to the earth and building, in particular natural building. Is when you go into a natural building, you can sense that the walls breathe. You feel the softness of the material. It's not as cold and hard as concrete. And there's also the invisible vibration, the feeling. You could think that it's a woo-woo conversation, but really that we can measure the vibrations and confirm the electrical capacitance inside of a building. And if
Mhm.
the signature looks like, a beautiful ecosystem or old growth forest, if they sort of match up, you have the basically golden ratio cascade of harmonies. Um, this is a good sign, and it's something that can promote overall health and well-being, being in that space, which is not true of certain other architecture that is built with, say, toxic, non-natural materials and a lot of steel and aluminum. So we're finding now there's a whole science of bioarchitecture. There's a lot to it. There's a sort of a coalition of bioarchitects out there, spearheaded by Mr. Dan Winter.
Mm.
There's a famous physicist and electrical engineer, and his equations really opened my mind to why this is important. It was an intuitive thing for me before, and now we can point to exactly why in physics with measurement certain materials work, certain forms work better than others. So which architects should get a paycheck and which ones should not?
Right.
It has a direct effect on human growth and brain development. We don't even know the full extent yet because we haven't been studying it long enough. But I'm 100% sure that the ancient builders, they understood all this, because when you analyze ancient architecture, the older, the farther back you go, the better it is in terms of you know, bio, biogeometry, bioarchitecture, sacred geometry, all those things. It will all pan out. And the ancients really understood about dowsing and the forces, the magnetic and electrical forces in the earth, and how to harmonize with that, where to put the buildings. So we're working with all that now, and it's not like it's magic, there's techniques, and there's folks that are very talented at this, dowsing and understanding the invisible. Basically, we're working with what's invisible, and just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's not there.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think, and a lot of people who follow me are very empathic, and they're very much feelers. And I think when when you're able to experience a kind of natural building that has a high frequency, I think it affects your well-being so much. And I don't think people realize how detrimental it is to live in the world that we live in today, with all the building structures and all of the just all of the energy that's in the air constantly bombarding us. And I wonder even if that would shield us, those kind of buildings, since they're made of earth, if it would shield us from uh the electromagnetic forces coming. What do you think about that? It sounds like it would be a grounding house.
Yeah, earthing, grounding, it's definitely related to that. Like the more electrically grounded you are, then my understanding is, the more your bioenergy field can implode, and you would describe it as the bigger your aura can grow. So we
Right.
want buildings and environments that will allow us to grow our aura, and it's proven that you can't really do that very well in an area that has ungrounded and unharmonized EMFs, radio frequencies, cell phone frequencies, electrical fields from electricity. These things are, thousands of times more powerful than the electrical impulses in and around our bodies from our own bodies. So they're going to interfere with our bodies. Even sleeping on top of underground stream can kill you. So if you think about the amount of, electrical field there's around a flowing water, it's probably more subtle than that of giant electrical cable. with lots of current running through it. So all these things can disrupt, and yeah, we're kind of bombarded these days. It's important to protect ourselves, but generally there are, the buildings that I consider the best in terms of bioarchitecture and harmonizing with the human biofield are those that allow our they don't isolate our charge from the larger vibration of the earth. So
Mm,
there's a couple things going on. We want to limit our exposure to these EMFs, the electromagnetic frequencies that are the harmful ones that are from man-made things. But
right.
then we also don't want to isolate ourselves from the vibrations of the earth, like the Schumann resonance and the cascade of frequencies that you would see coming off of the earth. So being close to the earth, being grounded, it's all kind of the same theme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's so great. So if people want more information about the workshop that's coming up so they can build their own amazing fancy biohouse, where would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the easiest place to just look me up is online. My company's called Earth in Hand, and we're at earthinhand.com. That's EARTHEN hand.com. So you can give me a call or send me an email. Yeah, it's filling up fast, so gotta act now.
Yeah, act now. And thank you so much for creating this class and just putting this into the world because I think we need it. We need it. And the more of these houses that are out there, I think the higher vibration we're all gonna get. And we all need as much help as we can get now. The way the world's going, I think we all need this information.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, we're all just figuring it out together, and even the most advanced people in the world today are just figuring it out. And so I think that's important for beginners to keep in mind. Everyone can study hard and make a difference for the advancement of human knowledge. And yeah, we're at a point now where who knows what the future will hold. We are looking at new technologies in terms of energy, electrical power generation, and water, being able to come up with as much water as we need, um, you know, combining it with water storage and passive solar house design, which has been around since like the 60s, by the way.
Right.
A lot of the really smart stuff has been around for quite a while. So the thing that I noticed over decades of studying was that I didn't feel that anybody was really integrating all of the best of the best of what I thought was possible. And I wondered why. There's not enough experimentation. And I felt that the people that were doing some really great work experimenting with different aspects like structural, vaults and domes, like Block Research Group, or you got Earthship Biotecture, who's doing some really interesting, greenhouse integrated growing food in the homes, and all that stuff is getting there. But there are so many wonderful materials that we can use now, and there's so many new technologies that nobody has tried a lot of really promising combinations. And so there's a lot of room for somebody with a lot of creativity to contribute to the greater knowledge by trying some really interesting new homes that may look the same as any other home, but would have a much better performance and longevity and greater health benefits.
This makes me excited about the future. So if the world looks bleak, here we go. These are the people who are coming in and making it happen. And I'm just so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for you and all the other people who are bringing this technology in. I think we don't see it. And that's why I wanted to do this video. So people can be inspired and know that the future isn't as bleak as we think. There's people that are creating a new world, and it's a better world. It's a healthier world. It's a higher vibrational world. And so we don't have to worry so much about things going down the tubes, because it seems like things are actually lifting up, and people are thinking about how to have a healthier world, how to have a more sustainable world, how to create a better, healthier, in harmony with the plant world. And I thank you so much for bringing this information to us all, because it's so needed. It's so needed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, 100%. It's a group effort. There's so many brilliant minds and hearts involved, and we already won because we're already on the path. If we make a decision to go in the right direction, we've already won. It's like, what counts as success is just going in the right direction. So um, we're there, and just maintaining the forward momentum and the positivity, like they say in the Monty Python song, if life seems jolly rotten, there's something you've forgotten.
Nice.
It's really true. There's just a lot. If it seems like it's hopeless, it's because we're just ignorant. We're just ignorant of the millions of solutions happening, and it's at such a rate now that I truly believe nobody knows it all. Like, nobody has their finger on the pulse of all the new technologies. There's just too many awesome new options. It's happening so fast, and everybody is doing their best, to bring solutions and to alleviate some of the suffering. I mean, we have some serious amount of suffering around the world. So we're all in it together, and just stay positive.
Yay. Go team consciousness. Woo. We got this, guys.
Yeah, and go team industry. Like, I started my podcast around this time last year, and it's just been a wonderful experience, and interviewed some really top level scientists and different elders in the natural building and bioarchitecture community, people that I really admire. So definitely check that out, guys.
What's the name of your podcast?
It's just the Earth in Hand podcast. So if you just type in Earth in Hand on YouTube, you'll find it.
Awesome.
But yeah, one of the guys I interviewed just recently, one of my last videos that came out, is a fellow named Dr. Jay Dubinsky of the Energyme Green Group. And listen to that one, because it's just mind-blowing, the stuff that him and his team of engineers are coming out with. Some of these technologies, like you can use the sun to generate hydrogen, and then store the hydrogen in a nickel hydride liquid form. And so they're getting like almost 100% efficiency in energy storage. And then they have a new desalinization technology that's different than anything else out there. They're just coming out. They got all their patents very recently, and they're coming out with some really huge contracts for different countries in Asia to start out with, like the Philippines and Thailand. And it's just really inspiring, because look, all that stuff that we worry about, are we gonna have enough water, are we gonna have enough power? Well, actually we can do it. It's already being done, and we just need to get our hands on this technology. It's already around, and some of these technologies are in the order of magnitude 100 times more efficient than the next leading technology. So I think things are moving along. We're getting new things that are 100 times more efficient than the last thing we had. It's like, okay, well, now we can just take seawater and use a little bit of energy, very small amount, to turn it into fresh, usable drinking water and water plants, and regreen not only the deserts of Earth, but just regreen the whole Earth and make it into a beautiful forest of abundance. So it's happening. We just need to activate, and it's happening slowly. Yeah.
We just need to get the word out there that things are actually good, and maybe things are better than they've ever been. We just need people to know. There's hope, people. There's hope.
Yeah, I mean, think about it as like we just had a lot of growing pains in the pathway of developing technologies. It's not, the whole story isn't all about, you know, the bad guys, and you know, some of it's just, we're just ignorant. It's just slowly like realizing that, oh well, this was a good idea at the time, but you know, now the byproduct of this technology is bad enough that we're going to stop using that. And it's just kind of like an evolution of our development of our tech. And within that is the you know, powering the home and producing food in and around the home, uh, getting water, safe drinking water. It's what everybody wants, you know, just clean water, clean air, clean food, and some sunshine, and a safe place to rest your head. So
That's
we're
great.
looking at.
Oh, yay. Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I really appreciate it. I feel like, you know, I love your point of view of things are getting better, and there's amazing, there's even so much technology that we don't know about that is amazing and awesome and is coming. So that's going to give us all hope, I think. Yeah.
And some of it's been around for a really long time.
Right. Right.
That's a whole other topic. Yeah. Some of it was severely repressed. So, you know, and it's still there. It never was not there. We just didn't hear about it. So potentials are huge, and a lot of the technologies that I've heard about and I've read about and I've met people that were involved in are so radical and so amazing, almost at the level of magic, that I don't even really talk about it. And I don't really focus on it that much yet, even though I know it's there, because I'm just trying to be grounded in the here and now. What do we have now? And but in the near future, I mean, people can look forward to who knows what. I mean, we could with a society that is focused on the positive, anything is possible. So
Yeah. So
we'll,
keep looking towards making the world a better place. Don't fighting against what's wrong is focusing on what's wrong. But if you're creating the future, you have to create it with new things, right? So the more you're focused on what you want to see in the world, what you want to create in the world, how you want the world to look, that's where we make the changes. Yeah. Yeah. New world. Let's create it right now.
yeah, we're doing it. We got plenty of time. We got our whole lives to love. So
That's right. That's right.
thanks for this interview, Joanna.
Yay. So everybody go to earthenhand.com and then find his podcast on YouTube. It's amazing. And, you know, all of those people you said you don't want to talk to yet, talk to them because we want to hear all about it. We want to hear all that out there stuff so that we can get inspired.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I gotta put in another plug for Mr. Dan Winter, because if anybody just wants to learn and you're just interested in the secrets of the universe and physics, I mean, just watch all of Dan Winter's videos. And you know, there's people out there that are bad mouthing him, saying he's a quack or whatever, but 100% everything he's told me has been on point, and he's grounded in the physics and the science. He's a top level scientist in my opinion, and you can really learn a lot just by watching his videos, and he's very spiritual as well. So you know, this isn't like a personality worship. This is just, he is tapped into the pure principle, as he calls it. And once you realize that we are discovering these undeniable truths of the physics of the universe, then it becomes very interesting, and it actually applies to anything and everything. So we need to get our fundamental concepts of reality and physics and the dimensions that we exist in, and then everything else becomes a little easier. It's like we understand the basics, then everything else can flow. So I highly recommend that channel on YouTube as well.
Yay. Aw. So glad to meet you. And so Earth in Hand, Dan Winters, and anything else you want the people to know before we send them on their way?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't make the bioarchitecture primer, reach out to me anyway. Join the Earth in Hand newsletter. We're doing new workshops all the time, and you know, I only send out a couple of newsletters every month, so it's pretty mellow. But I keep everyone informed about what I'm thinking about and what events are coming up next that are really compelling. So you can sign up for my newsletter through my webpage, earthandhand.com.
Yay, thank you so much. And take care, everybody, and have an awesome, amazing day. And look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Bye.